So have you ever noticed that there are things that you're incredibly good at, and when something goes wrong, like you don't get angry, you just solve it? Yeah? Like imagine you're a really good cook and you accidentally burnt dinner. You don't sit there and yell at the stove or scream at the pots, right? You don't throw things across the kitchen. You just think, oh man, okay, what can I make instead? Or what the heck happened? Do I need to change my timing? Take another example. Maybe you've gardened for years and a plant dies, and you might be disappointed, especially if you love the plant, but you're not going to become furious. You may ask yourself what happened, or did I water too much or not enough, or is there those insects or frost? So you move into problem solving. And now think about a completely different situation, like a difficult conversation you've had, or someone who just absolutely refuses to listen. Or maybe a relationship that's been struggling, or you have a decision to make it work and you know that people are going to be hurt by it. Or watching the news and seeing something that is really super disturbing for you. Why is it that those situations can ignite your anger, while the burnt dinner or the plant don't? I don't think it's because the situation is worse. I think it's because in one situation, we absolutely know what to do, and in the other one, we don't. So what I propose is that one of the biggest misunderstandings we have about anger is believing that it's about what happened. And I've come to believe that it's not that at all. I think anger is an indicator that we've begun to believe that we have no agency, that we're subject to the situation, and that something deeply matters to us and we don't know how to influence it. That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Leeza Steindorf. I'm an international leadership coach and human development specialist. And for over 20 years, I've worked with people across cultures, teams, organizations, helping them to navigate conflict, difficult conversations, and really deal with moments in life that matter the most to them. And over those years, I've become much less interested in the anger itself and much more interested in what anger is pointing toward. So in the last few videos, we've talked about our relationship with anger. We've talked about the different ways that we respond to it. We've talked about the common beliefs that anger equals power. But today I want to look underneath it, because I don't think anger actually shows up randomly. So let's just imagine two different people, right? The first one has been repairing cars for 30 years, like really experienced mechanic. And they have an engine, it won't start, there's smoke, clearly there's something wrong. But they don't get angry. At least usually they don't, right? They're going to get curious and start asking questions and getting analytical and, what changed? What system failed? What did we just repair? What am I missing? Because they believe they can do something, that they have influence on the outcome. Now imagine someone who's never even opened the hood of a car, and the same thing happens, right? Engine won't start, it's smoking, the car dies, they're stranded, they're late, whatever, and they have no idea what's wrong. And suddenly that frustration starts building. Maybe they even get angry. So what's the difference? It's not the car. It's not the engine that's smoking and won't start, right? It's their relationship to the situation. Like the one person, the experienced person, they have this experience of possibility, like they can do something. And the other person probably feels helpless, like they're subject to this car that won't go anywhere and is smoking. And I think that's a distinction that we really don't even pay attention to, because most of us have been taught to look at anger as though it's the problem. And I don't think it is. I think it's merely an indicator. It's not an enemy. It's not something bad or something we have to get rid of. And it's also not something, which our culture does, something to admire. It's simply an indicator. Just like the fuel indicator on your car. That's all. When light comes on that the gas tank's empty, you don't get angry at the light. You don't tape it over and you don't get excited. You're like, okay, what's this telling me? Out of gas? I'm going to look for the next gas station. And I think that our anger deserves that kind of relationship, that kind of curiosity. And that doesn't mean that anger is the answer. More often, it's pointing toward a question that we haven't even considered yet. When did I start believing I have no influence over this? And that question's actually kind of guided me for a long time. Maybe not formally stated that way, but it's like, why do I believe I have no impact here? Because once you start asking that question and thinking through that lens, you start seeing anger differently, okay? Think about work, for example. Let's say you spend weeks preparing a proposal and you've thought it through, you've done your homework, you've done your research, the meeting begins, and you're just about to do the proposal and someone dismisses your idea before you've even finished speaking. And then you get angry, right? And why is it? Is it because someone disagreed with you? Maybe. But more often than not, in that moment, you've started to believe that you no longer have the ability to influence what happens next. Like your command of the situation is like running out of your fingers. Your sense of agency shrinks. Or imagine you're in a relationship, okay? And you've had the same conversation over and over and over again, 10, 20 times, whatever, and nothing changes. And eventually that anger starts bubbling up before you even have the conversation again. And that's not because you're an angry person. It's because you're beginning to believe nothing I do matters. Like this is never going to change. And that's a very painful place to be. And people don't want to continue to experience that. So I think many people live there without realizing it. So sometimes it shows up as anger, resentment. Sometimes it shows up as cynicism, or maybe you even just give up, right? There may be different expressions of that experience, but it's a similar experience. It's the belief that we've lost meaningful influence. We've lost the ability to really impact a situation. So I want to make a distinction that I think is really important, because someone's inevitably going to hear this and think, oh, so you're saying we should just never be angry. No, not at all. It's not what I'm saying. There are things in this world that really move us. Like when children are harmed, or people are dehumanized, or when there's injustice, yeah, or when the natural world around us is exploited. Of course we feel something strongly. And I would be concerned if we didn't. Like that's what makes us human. That outrage is a deeply human response when our values are violated. But outrage and chronic anger or habitual anger patterns, those are not the same thing. So outrage can actually wake us up and give us an awareness that we can focus our attention and our movement toward what it is that we want. But chronic or habitual anger that just repeats itself and keeps us stuck, if that's our only option, it's just a reaction. And those are two very different paths, right? The one is an awareness, oh my gosh, I'm angry, I'm outraged. What am I going to do about this? What direction do I want to go in? And the other one is just frustration and anger, and it's self-perpetuating. So I've had the privilege of working with extraordinary leaders over the years in dozens of countries. People that are leading organizations, government agencies, communities, like people who are really facing enormous pressures and challenges. And you know what surprised me the most? Is that the most effective people in those situations, the most effective leaders, are almost never the ones that are the loudest. They weren't ones that got angry really quickly and stomped their hands and, who came into the room with intensity at all. The people that were most effective are the ones who stayed connected to what mattered to them, what mattered to the group or the initiative, without allowing themselves to become consumed by their emotional reaction. It doesn't mean they didn't have emotional responses to what was going on, but they stayed in command of themselves and of what they wanted to accomplish. And that didn't mean that they cared less. They actually often, I think, cared more because they didn't spin into their own orbit of emotions and anger. But they learned something important, I think, and that is that clarity creates more change than anger ever will. Clarity of your values, of your desires, like of what you want, and also of your choices, like what direction are you going to choose to go in? So, what do we do with that? Well, if anger is an indicator and it's not the destination, what is it that we're actually looking for, right, when it comes up? And there's nothing wrong with being angry. You can be angry. I'm not talking about that. But if you are experiencing anger a lot and you don't want to continue experiencing it a lot, this is a way out. This is a way through and beyond. So what can we do? One question. Not why am I angry, but what is it about this situation that has me believing I have no agency? And notice the wording, because I didn't say what situation has taken away my agency, because those aren't the same thing, right? Our experience of feeling helpless, that may be real. And the belief that we have no agency is valid. But that belief that we have no agency, that doesn't make it a reality. It doesn't make it a concrete truth. And that is actually where not only where our work begins, but that's where we have command. And you don't have to, it's not about pretending everything's fine or telling ourselves we shouldn't be angry. It's not about suppressing our anger or managing it or even bursting out and letting it, have its way. But when we recognize that we have come into a position where we feel we have no agency, we can get curious. So I've worked with leaders who have faced situations that would overwhelm anybody, like budgets just disappearing or teams in conflict, like during COVID, everything fell apart. Communities that have split up, or public representatives who have public criticism and deadlines and all these things, right? So from the outside, it would have made perfect sense for them to be angry all the time because all this stuff's coming at them, right? And some of them get that way, and that's fine. But the ones who consistently found a way to move forward, who did something different, they asked different questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening, or why is this happening to me? They asked themselves, what influence do I still have? What can I affect here? And that question, that approach, coming from that place, it changes everything, because when we believe we have no influence, then our whole nervous system begins to prepare for battle, right? It's that fight or flight, or withdraw, or attack, or defend, or blame. But when we start to realize that we have influence, even in circumstances, there's an amazing book called Man's Quest for Meaning from Viktor Frankl about his experience in concentration camps. And he came to this. A human being still always has a semblance of agency and choice. Always, even in those extreme situations, right? And when we believe that, when we recognize we have that influence, then our options start to grow. Even if they're few, but at least they're there. And that doesn't always mean that we get what we want. The outcome isn't exactly what we want. But it's important because agency is not the same thing as control. We can't control situations. But we have influence, and we can command ourselves, and we can access our own agency. So there are many things we can't control. Another person's choices, the economy, the weather, for example, whether someone else understands us, or whether our country goes to war, or whether someone behaves ethically and according to our values, or there's countless things that are outside of our control, right? But influence, that's different. We have influence, right? We can ask ourselves the questions of, what's mine to do here? What conversation can I have, or what boundary can I set? What action could I possibly take given what is within my agency? Or what perspective haven't I considered yet? Yeah, those are the questions. What support do I need? Or what values do I want to live from in this situation? Do you hear the difference in those? So that second set of questions, they actually move us. They resonate with who we are. And it doesn't mean that we get the certainty that we would like to have, but they move us toward possibility, toward an opening. And possibility is very different than helplessness. It's actually just the flip of it. So one of the reasons that I wanted to create this series is because I think we've become very confused about anger. We've either glorified it, made it this king, the person who's the angriest is the best, or we judge it. We vilify the people that get angry. We admire people who seem perpetually outraged and stomping, pounding their fist. But I don't think that either one of those approaches serves us very well, because anger doesn't make you a bad person and it doesn't make you strong either. It's simply an indicator. It's telling you to pay attention to something. So the mistake is believing that because something is calling our attention, that anger is the best response. I don't think it is. So let's just imagine you're walking through your home and you smell smoke. And that smell is incredibly useful because it's saying, ding, 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 ding. You need to notice something here. Don't ignore it. But once you've noticed it, you don't spend the time standing there smelling smoke, right? You go look for the source and then you respond, you take action. And I think that anger works the same way, right? You notice it. It's like, ding, 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 ding. I'm angry. What's going on here? Where am I feeling like I'm helpless? When did I start feeling like I had no agency? So you can respect it as a useful tool. And then look beneath it, look underneath it, look beyond it. Because what we're really after isn't the anger. That's just it's a tool, as I said. But we're looking for understanding. And when we understand something, we can gain clarity. And when we have clarity, that's when we have choice. And that's where that agency then comes. So I often think about difficult conversations. Like people say to me, I just lost my temper. I don't think you lose it. I don't think it's an oopsie. I lost it. I don't. I'm speaking from personal experience here. I really believe it's a choice. Because usually when we slow the conversation down, something becomes clear, right? The experience before the anger or under the anger, like I didn't know how to get through to them, or I felt like they dismissed me, or I felt like trapped in the situation, or I didn't know what else to do, right? And those are different statements. Those are different awarenesses. And those statements reveal what's actually at work. It's not about eliminating anger or expanding our capacity or our perspective. It's not even about communication, and I'm all about communication. It's about developing and expanding our ability to stay connected to ourselves when something really matters to us. Because this is what I've learned through all these years, all these experiences, is that people who create the most meaningful change aren't the people who never feel anger. Yeah? They just don't stop there. They don't allow anger to point them toward what matters and then move from reaction to response. They know that anger is an indicator that this matters to them. And then they choose to get curious. They choose to get creative and intentional. And then they look for something they can do. They become active. They connect to their agency. And that's where change begins. And it's not because their world suddenly became easier at all. It's often just the opposite. But they don't believe that anger itself is the solution. It's just an indicator that they need to pay attention. So from all of that, here's something you may want to consider doing this week. The next time that you just notice yourself starting to get angry or frustrated, whatever, irritated, whatever word you want to put on it or whatever level it is, don't rush through it. Don't try and explain it or justify it. And don't try and get rid of it. Just notice it. I have that acronym POP. Pause, observe, proceed. So pause for a minute and observe. It's like, whoa, feeling angry. Maybe you even want to feel in your body. Like, how do you get angry? How does it feel when you get angry? Everybody does it differently. And then take a minute and ask yourself, like, what matters to me so much here? Because there's something that matters to you, otherwise you wouldn't be feeling anger. And where have I begun believing I have no agency? Like, what part of this has made me believe, or what part of this am I believing I have no influence over? And you may discover that underneath the anger, there's something a lot more honest. Like maybe there's a desire or one of your values, or you're disappointed, or you're afraid of something, or you're longing for something. Yeah? Or you simply want to make a difference in a situation that matters to you deeply. So that's a very different conversation. What I'm speaking to you about is looking at your relationship, not only with your emotions, but with anger specifically. And I think it's really useful. So if you want, try this practice this week. when you notice yourself getting angry, don't try and change it. As I said, pop. Become curious. Ask yourself, where do I believe I have no agency? And notice how that one question changes actually the conversation that you begin having with yourself. And then let me know in the comments below how it went. Like, I'm interested in your experience. And if you found this conversation useful, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel so you'll know when new ones come out, as I said. And if someone came to mind while you were listening to this, go ahead and share it with them. In the next video, we're going to look at really a common phrase. I'm sure you've heard it often. It was, you made me angry, right? It's a sentence we've all said, but inside that, there's a belief that actually gives away our power more than you think it does. And I think once you see it, you're not going to hear that sentence the same way again, because I don't think that the goal is to never feel anger at all. It's a part of our human palette of emotions, and we have a huge palette. But it's an opportunity to get to know ourselves better and to know what anger's pointing at for us and giving us a possibility to have a choice about what we do with it. All right? Thanks for listening, and until next time, be well.